Toyota did something that sounds almost unbelievable. It took one of the most important technologies from one of its biggest competitors, put it inside a Toyota, added its own badge, and started selling the car. That competitor was BYD, the Chinese electric vehicle giant that competes directly with Toyota in the global automotive market. To many people, the Toyota BZ3 looked like a surrender in the electric car race. After all, Toyota is the company famous for the Prius and for pioneering modern hybrid vehicles. So why would it need a rival's technology to build an EV? But the real story is much more interesting. The Toyota BZ3 is an electric sedan developed for the Chinese market. From the outside, it looks like a typical Toyota: clean design, familiar branding, and the build quality customers expect from the company. The surprising part is underneath. The BZ3 uses a battery developed by BYD, and BYD isn't a small startup. It has become one of the world's biggest electric vehicle manufacturers and one of Toyota's strongest competitors. Toyota didn't simply buy batteries from BYD either. The two companies created a joint venture called BYD Toyota EV Technology. Toyota also worked with FAW Toyota, its longtime Chinese partner, to manufacture and sell the vehicle. More than 100 engineers from Toyota and BYD worked together on the car, covering areas such as design, production, battery structure, cooling, electronics, and safety. The result was an electric sedan capable of delivering more than 600 kilometers of range on a charge. Production began in 2023, and the car is already on Chinese roads. For Toyota, this was a remarkable decision. The company had spent decades building its reputation around self-reliance, manufacturing expertise, and hybrid technology. The Prius had made Toyota one of the biggest names in fuel-efficient vehicles. So why partner with a direct competitor? To understand that, you have to look at Toyota's strategy. For years, Toyota chairman Akio Toyoda was openly skeptical about the idea that battery electric vehicles would completely dominate the future of transportation. While other automakers were racing toward fully electric lineups, Toyota promoted what it called a multi-pathway strategy. The company wanted to invest in hybrids, hydrogen vehicles, cleaner gasoline engines, and battery electric cars, rather than betting everything on EVs. At first, that strategy made sense. Toyota had sold tens of millions of hybrids and had enormous experience in the technology. If the world moved slowly toward EVs, Toyota's cautious approach could have turned out to be extremely smart. But then, China changed everything. Around 2020, electric and plug-in hybrid vehicles were still a relatively small part of the Chinese market. But sales grew incredibly quickly. By 2023, new energy vehicles accounted for roughly 35% of passenger car sales in China, representing around 7.7 million vehicles in 1 year. In some months, electric and plug-in hybrid cars even made up more than half of all new car sales. That meant the world's largest car market was changing faster than Toyota had expected. And this wasn't happening simply because of government policies or environmental pressure. Chinese electric cars were becoming genuinely good. They were improving quickly, becoming more technologically advanced, and, just as importantly, remaining affordable. Companies like BYD had built enormous experience in batteries, electric powertrains, and mass-market EV production. Toyota suddenly faced a difficult choice. It could spend years developing every part of its EV technology internally, or it could work with a company that was already highly competitive in the areas where Toyota needed to catch up. Toyota chose the second option. That's why the BZ3 shouldn't necessarily be seen as Toyota admitting defeat. In many ways, it shows Toyota recognizing one of the most important rules of business. You don't have to build everything yourself to win. Toyota brought its strengths: engineering, manufacturing, quality control, reliability, and global automotive experience. BYD brought its strengths: battery technology, EV expertise, and experience producing affordable electric vehicles at scale. The BZ3 was the result. So while the car may look like Toyota borrowing technology from a rival, the bigger picture is strategic. Toyota wasn't simply giving up on electric vehicles, it was finding a faster way to compete in a market that was changing much faster than expected. And that may be the smartest part of the entire story. Sometimes, winning the future doesn't mean doing everything yourself. Sometimes it means recognizing what your competitor does better, partnering with them, and using that advantage to catch up. That is what makes the Toyota BZ3 so interesting. It isn't just an electric Toyota. It is a sign that even one of the world's most traditional automakers was willing to change its strategy when the automotive industry changed around it. Chinese electric vehicles were not just becoming more advanced, they were also packed with technology, competitively priced, and improving with every new generation. For a Chinese customer walking into a showroom, an electric car could simply be the better deal. And that was a serious problem for Toyota. Toyota had built its global reputation around being the practical, reliable, and good value choice. But suddenly, Chinese automakers were challenging Toyota on exactly those strengths, and they were doing it in Toyota's own market. One company leading that transformation was BYD. Then, in March 2022, BYD made a decision that sent a powerful message to the entire industry. It stopped producing traditional gasoline-only vehicles. No more conventional combustion engine cars. BYD decided to focus entirely on battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids. The strategy paid off. BYD captured roughly a third of China's new energy vehicle market, while Toyota was still protecting and expanding its highly successful hybrid business. In other words, BYD was aggressively building the electric future that Toyota had believed was still several years away. Suddenly, Toyota had a problem that its hybrid technology alone couldn't solve. China is the largest car market in the world, and Toyota sells millions of vehicles there. If Chinese consumers continued switching to electric vehicles at such a rapid pace, Toyota couldn't afford to offer cars that were simply good enough. It needed a genuinely competitive EV. Otherwise, Toyota risked losing far more than a few percentage points of market share. It could eventually lose its position in one of the most important automotive markets on Earth. But developing a world-class EV battery from scratch isn't something an automaker can accomplish overnight. The battery has to be affordable, safe, durable, powerful, and efficient. Developing all of that internally can take years. Toyota didn't have years to wait. And there was something almost symbolic about what happened next. Toyota was the company that revolutionized modern automotive manufacturing. Its production system became a global benchmark and was studied by businesses around the world. Other automakers spent decades trying to copy Toyota's methods. Yet now, Toyota was turning to a Chinese company that had barely entered the automotive industry 2 decades earlier. The reason was simple. The automotive industry had changed dramatically. If Toyota needed a competitive EV battery right away, the logical place to look was the company that had already spent decades perfecting battery technology. That company was BYD, but BYD didn't originally start as an automaker. The company was founded in 1995 as a battery manufacturer, producing small batteries used in products such as mobile phones and laptops. That meant BYD spent years developing deep expertise in battery technology before it ever seriously entered the car business. When BYD eventually moved into electric vehicles, it approached the industry from a completely different direction. Instead of starting with a traditional car company and trying to master batteries, BYD started as a battery company and then learned how to build vehicles around that technology. That experience eventually produced one of BYD's most famous innovations, the Blade Battery. And to understand why this technology attracted so much attention, you need to understand one of the biggest concerns surrounding electric vehicles. Battery fires. EV batteries store an enormous amount of energy in a relatively small space. If a battery is severely damaged, it can potentially overheat and enter a dangerous chain reaction known as thermal runaway. Once thermal runaway begins, the battery can become extremely hot and, in some cases, catch fire. For electric vehicles, battery safety is therefore one of the most important engineering challenges. In 2020, BYD wanted to demonstrate that its Blade battery had a major advantage in this area. So the company conducted a dramatic nail penetration test and recorded the results. The concept was simple, but extreme. A fully charged battery was pierced with a steel nail, deliberately creating a short circuit, the kind of damage that can cause serious battery failure. BYD tested 3 different battery types. The first was a conventional nickel-based battery, a chemistry widely used in EVs at the time. After the nail penetrated the battery, its surface temperature climbed above 500 degrees Celsius and the battery burst into flames. The second was a conventional lithium iron phosphate battery. It didn't catch fire, but its surface temperature still rose dramatically, reaching roughly 200 degrees Celsius to 400 degrees Celsius. Then came BYD's Blade Battery. The same nail was driven straight through it, but this time there was no visible fire and no smoke. The battery's surface temperature remained relatively low, around 30 degrees Celsius to 60 degrees Celsius. The demonstration created enormous attention. BYD had successfully highlighted one of the biggest selling points of its battery: technology, safety. And this wasn't just important to engineers and automakers. For ordinary consumers, battery safety is one of the biggest concerns when considering an electric vehicle. People want to know that the car sitting in their garage or parked outside their home isn't carrying a dangerous fire risk. BYD understood that. Its Blade Battery wasn't just another piece of engineering. It was a way to make electric vehicles more affordable, practical, and, perhaps most importantly, more trustworthy to everyday buyers. And that was exactly the kind of technology Toyota needed as the global automotive industry began moving toward an electric future. Every time a video of an electric car catching fire goes viral, it increases concerns about EV safety. BYD understood this problem and made battery safety one of its biggest selling points. Its Blade Battery uses lithium iron phosphate, or LFP, chemistry. Compared with many nickel and cobalt-based batteries, LFP can be cheaper to produce and doesn't require cobalt, a costly material associated with serious mining concerns. BYD also redesigned the battery's physical structure. Its long, thin cells are arranged efficiently inside the battery pack, allowing more energy to fit into the available space. The Blade Battery is also designed to last for thousands of charging cycles. That means the battery could potentially remain useful for a large part of the vehicle's lifetime. And this is extremely important because the battery is the most expensive component of an electric vehicle. BYD founder Wang Chuanfu has said that the battery can account for as much as 40% of an EV's total cost. So, if a company can produce batteries that are affordable, safe, durable, and at massive scale, it has a huge advantage. BYD had all of those pieces in place. For Toyota, the decision became much easier. If it wanted a competitive electric vehicle for China quickly, BYD already had the technology and manufacturing capacity. Toyota could spend years developing a similar battery internally, or it could work with BYD and enter the market much faster. Toyota chose the second option. But calling this a simple case of Toyota buying a BYD battery and putting a Toyota badge on it misses the bigger picture. Toyota and BYD created a joint venture in which both companies contributed their strengths. BYD brought its battery technology, electric motors, and years of EV experience. Toyota brought decades of engineering expertise, manufacturing discipline, quality control, and one of the most trusted automotive brands in the world. Toyota engineers worked with BYD on areas such as the battery structure, cooling system, safety monitoring, and overall vehicle integration. So the BZ3 wasn't simply a BYD vehicle with a Toyota logo. It was a combination of BYD's electric technology and Toyota's engineering standards. For Toyota, the biggest advantage was time. Instead of spending years and billions of dollars trying to develop every EV component from scratch, Toyota could immediately compete with a vehicle using proven battery technology. And Toyota didn't stop there. The company continued expanding its electric vehicle efforts in China. That's why the BYD partnership shouldn't automatically be seen as Toyota admitting defeat. It was a strategic decision. Toyota realized that while it could eventually develop competitive EV technology itself, the market wasn't going to wait. So rather than waste valuable years reinventing technology that BYD had already mastered, Toyota used the partnership to buy itself time. And that raises a much bigger question. What was Toyota planning to do with that extra time? The answer may be one of the most important technologies in the future of electric vehicles: solid-state batteries. Today's EV batteries, including BYD's Blade Battery, generally use a liquid or gel electrolyte to move energy inside the battery. Solid-state batteries replace that liquid or gel with a solid material. That change could bring several major advantages. A solid-state battery could potentially store much more energy in the same amount of space and weight, giving EVs significantly more range. It could also enable much faster charging and potentially improve safety by reducing the use of flammable liquid materials. Toyota has been working toward energy densities that could be roughly twice those of today's batteries. If that technology can be produced reliably and affordably at large scale, it could represent a huge leap forward, and that may explain the logic behind Toyota's entire strategy. Toyota didn't necessarily need BYD to be its final answer to the EV race. It may have needed BYD as a bridge. BYD gave Toyota a way to compete in the rapidly changing electric car market today, while Toyota continued developing what it believed could be the next major breakthrough in battery technology. So the BZ3 isn't necessarily the story of Toyota giving up. It could be the story of Toyota buying itself time to catch up, adapt, and prepare for the next generation of electric vehicles. Solid-state batteries have been called the holy grail of electric vehicles for years. The reason we don't already see them everywhere is simple. They're extremely difficult to manufacture reliably. Early solid-state batteries faced problems such as cracking, short lifespans, and difficulty surviving repeated charging. Many companies have promised breakthroughs, but very few have managed to bring the technology to mass production. Toyota is not alone in pursuing it. Nissan, Honda, BMW, and other major automakers are also investing heavily in solid-state technology because the potential rewards are enormous. Toyota says it has been working to solve the durability and manufacturing problems that have held solid-state batteries back. The company is targeting its first solid-state batteries for around 2027 to 2028, with performance goals that could dramatically change the EV market. Toyota has discussed a target of around 1,000 kilometers of range on a single charge, along with charging from 10% to 80% in roughly 10 minutes. If those targets become reality in a production vehicle, it would be a huge improvement over many EVs available today. To make that possible, Toyota has been working with Japanese materials companies such as Sumitomo Metal Mining and Idemitsu-Kosan to develop the materials and manufacturing process. The first vehicles using the technology are expected to carry the Lexus badge, Toyota's luxury brand. That's a logical starting point because premium vehicles can absorb the high cost of new technology more easily, but there's an important warning: these numbers are still targets. The 1,000-kilometer figure is based on a specific testing cycle, and real-world driving, especially highway driving, will likely produce lower range. The same goes for the charging time. Battery technology has a long history of looking revolutionary in announcements and taking longer than expected to reach mass production. Even so, if Toyota can produce an EV that travels close to 1,000 kilometers and charges in around 10 minutes, it could become a serious competitor in the next generation of electric vehicles. Toyota isn't simply waiting for solid-state batteries either. It's also improving conventional battery technology, with future targets that include around 1,000 kilometers of range and charging times of approximately 20 minutes. And this reveals the bigger strategy. In the short term, Toyota can use BYD's technology to stay competitive in China. In the long term, it is investing in solid-state batteries that could potentially leapfrog today's EV technology. In other words, BYD can help Toyota compete today, while Toyota prepares for what it believes could be the next major breakthrough. That's why the Toyota-BYD partnership shouldn't automatically be viewed as a defeat. Toyota may not have been giving up on EVs, it may have been buying itself time. And to understand why this strategy matters, look at how dramatically BYD itself has changed. Back in 2011, Elon Musk was asked about BYD during a television interview and laughed off the company, saying he didn't think its products were particularly impressive. At the time, that view was common in the West. Chinese automakers were often seen as cheap manufacturers that weren't serious competitors to established global brands. That perception has completely changed. By the end of 2025, BYD had become one of the world's biggest electric vehicle manufacturers. It sold roughly 2.26 million battery electric vehicles during the year, surpassing Tesla's annual BEV sales for the first time. The company that was once easy to dismiss had become one of the companies the entire automotive industry was watching. And BYD's biggest advantage isn't just the number of cars it sells, it's how much of the technology it controls itself. BYD manufactures a large portion of its own components, including batteries, electric motors, and other important technologies. This level of vertical integration gives the company greater control over costs, supply chains, and production. Its manufacturing scale has also grown incredibly quickly. BYD produced around 500,000 vehicles in 2017. By 2024, that number had climbed to roughly 4 million. That transformation explains why Toyota and other traditional automakers are taking BYD so seriously. The EV competition isn't only about designing a good electric car anymore. It's about controlling batteries, managing supply chains, reducing costs, scaling production, improving software, and moving faster than competitors. BYD spent years building those capabilities, and Toyota's decision to work with BYD shows just how much the balance of power in the global auto industry has shifted. BYD's growth is almost unprecedented in the automotive industry. The company has transformed itself into a massive manufacturing operation, expanding beyond China with factories such as its Hungary plant for the European market. Its vehicles are also spreading across Southeast Asia, Latin America, and other regions. What's remarkable is that BYD became one of the world's biggest EV manufacturers while having almost no presence in the United States, where high tariffs have made it difficult to compete directly. One of the early investors who recognized BYD's potential was Warren Buffett, whose company invested in BYD back in 2008, long before the brand became famous in the West. Toyota is not alone in recognizing the importance of Chinese battery technology. Traditional automakers around the world are increasingly working with Chinese companies because batteries are the heart of an electric vehicle. For most of the last century, the winning strategy in the auto industry was to control everything yourself: engines, factories, suppliers, and technology. Toyota became one of the world's best at exactly that approach. But the EV era is changing the rules. Technology is developing so quickly that even the strongest automaker cannot be the best at everything. The new advantage is speed. Recognizing where you're falling behind, putting pride aside, using the best technology available, even if it comes from a rival, and buying time to develop your own solution. That's essentially what Toyota did with BYD. Toyota saw that BYD had a battery technology it needed immediately. Instead of pretending the gap didn't exist, it used BYD's strength to remain competitive while continuing to develop its own next-generation technology. So the Toyota-BYD partnership shouldn't simply be called a surrender to China. It's better understood as a strategic move to survive today while preparing for tomorrow. And BYD's biggest advantage isn't just its battery, it's the massive manufacturing system behind it. Its highly automated factories, vertical integration, supply chain control, and enormous production capacity allow BYD to build vehicles quickly and at competitive prices. That is the real lesson from this story. The future of the automotive industry may belong not to companies that insist on doing everything themselves, but to companies that can adapt fastest, use the best technology available, and scale it faster than their competitors.